On the third day of the Democrat convention, the Democrats went into a full-on gun control advocacy campaign. And now, I'm going to break it down with the facts.
90% of Americans support common sense gun laws because we need to do more to address the epidemic of gun violence. Let's start there.
Right now in America, we have over 300 gun laws on the federal level and over 20,000 gun laws on a state and local level. Exactly how many more gun laws do we need until we reach common sense? Because I think we passed that number a long time ago. When your only solution is more gun laws, every gun law is common sense to you. And when you conduct a survey asking vague questions like, do you agree with common sense gun laws? Of course, 90% of the people are going to say yes, because if they don't, it's going to make them look like a monster. That's like asking me if I want to donate $1 to help blind children after I just spent $300 on 5 items at Whole Foods and there's a line of people behind me waiting to hear my response. I don't know them kids, but I gotta say yes now, because if I don't, I'll look like a monster.
People affected by everyday gun violence have to walk by the street corner where their best friend, their brother, their mother, their nephew, where they themselves were shot. And life goes on as if we all haven't just watched a loved one die and get put in the grave. The whole point of what I'm saying here is until one of us or all of us stand up and say, I can't do this anymore. I can't sit by and watch the news treat these shootings like acts of God. Gun violence isn't just going to stop until there's a force fighting harder against it, and I'm going to do something to prevent it.
There is a force fighting against it. It's called the millions of people who use a gun to save their lives every year against criminals. We care about saving lives just as much as you say you do, and that's why we have guns and don't want gun control laws that make it harder on us to do the very fighting that you assume we don't do.
They say that tougher gun laws do not decrease gun violence. We call BS!
Well, they don't. New York City literally has the toughest gun laws in the country, and 49 people were shot over a 72-hour period last week. Chicago has literally every single gun law that they're going to propose in this video, yet 64 people were shot in Chicago this past weekend. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Gun control only controls good people. Bad people don't care about gun control. So when the bad people encounter the good people, the bad people will be the only ones with guns. Gun control may be well intended by some, but the real world results of gun control make life hell for good people.
They say a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. We call BS!
But it's true. A 1995 study conducted by 2 criminologists concluded that there are between 2.2 and 2.5 million defensive gun uses every year. However, when you bring this study up, anti-gunners will say, nuh-uh, that's not true, it's closer to 100,000. And that's supposed to make your argument stronger? 10 to 12,000 people die every year from gun violence. And let's say we go with the anti-gunners number of 100,000 defensive gun uses. That's still a lot of good guys with guns stopping a lot of bad guys with guns.
They say guns are just tools like knives. We call BS!
It's extremely hard to own a gun in London. So which tool do you think the criminals use to commit crime in London? Knives. And guess which tool they are now trying to ban in London? Knives. And when they ban knives and criminals start using hammers, they'll be trying to ban hammers too. So they may not think a gun is a tool just like a knife is, but they'll be trying to ban the knife just like they're trying to ban the gun now. So it being a tool or not makes no difference. Their goal is to ban their way to utopia, even if it doesn't work, because for a lot of anti-gunners, the perceived virtue of gun control is more important to them than the actual real-world effectiveness of gun control.
They say that no laws could have been able to prevent the hundreds of senseless tragedies that have occurred. We call BS!
She's referring to red flag laws, which says the government can come and take your guns away from you if someone feels you may commit a crime in the future, even if you haven't committed a crime. What's next after that? We're going to go to Chicago and take away all the guns from black people since most of the shootings are committed by young black men? While we're at it, how about we take the guns away from all the white people too, since most mass murders are young white men? You see where I'm going with this? Once you make it okay to violate rights for the feeling of safety, none of your rights will ever be safe.
That us kids don't know what we're talking about, that we're too young to understand how the government works. We call BS!
Unfortunately, you don't. Considering the number of people who were at this rally who knew nothing about actual gun laws or the Constitution, much less the Second Amendment.
So what does the Second Amendment say, though? It doesn't say people in the militia. What does it say? Let's see. Let's see if I can remember.
I got to memorize, so go ahead.
All right. In my defense, I looked this up at 3 a.m. just to get the wording right.
Like, as far as guns go, so, you know, a lot of states, they have things like waiting periods, registration, background checks. You can't carry them in most, like, right now in D.C., 99.99% of people here can't carry a gun here. So, I mean, would you like to be banned from public places?
No, I wouldn't want to be banned from public places.
You don't want the same rights as a gun, right?
No. What?
So do you feel like the states that have stricter gun laws, for example, have less of a murder rate than the states that have less strict gun laws?
I can't honestly say that because I don't know that statistic off the top of my head. I would say that that's a thing that would make sense in my head. I'd say that's probably what the case, but
It's not the case.
it's not. I didn't know that.
So why are we out here today?
Our lives and the lives of our children.
And what are we trying to achieve?
I want to say no, never again have a gun. I'm sorry, I'm being inarticulate right now. It's
Gotta get into the role.
yeah, I know. I want gun control, no more gun violence.
I know sometimes when we talk about policy, it sounds like a lot of just mumbo jumbo, but it's more about people. These are people and children dying, and we're not doing anything about it.
So what should we do?
I do think a lot of it does have to do with the people in power. Policy is where the change starts, and I don't have that power to enact that. So we need our politicians to do what they need to do for us. They represent us, so they need to change.
Sure, but what would you like to see specifically from those politicians?
Wow. I think
Maybe policy geared towards not just one demographic, but all of them.
Long before this pandemic, our country has been suffering from the epidemic of gun violence.
Actually, it hasn't. 67% of gun deaths are suicides, and the vast majority of the remaining deaths is from inner city gang violence. So no, we don't have or have been suffering from an epidemic of gun violence. Maybe an epidemic of suicides, but gun control won't fix this, because if suicides were a gun issue, we'd be leading the world in suicides, considering we have the most guns in the world. Yet we don't. We're not even close.
Gun violence is a public health crisis, one that disproportionately affects the Black and brown communities.
Gun violence disproportionately affects young Black men who live in the inner city. That is not a public health issue. It's a socioeconomic issue perpetuated by voting for the same types of politicians for decades who pander to your emotions and superficial cultural stereotypes, but never do anything tangible for the community. The Center for Disease Control is not going to fix inner city violence. Joe Biden knows exactly why these kids are engaging in the violence that they're engaging in. He just doesn't care, because it's easier to sell gun control than it is to work on fixing the socioeconomic conditions in these communities.
We must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter, or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. The end result is they're about to knock my mother on the head with a lead pipe, shoot my sister, beat up my wife, take on my sons. So I don't want to ask, what made them do this?
My freshman year, my high school went into lockdown because a kid brought a gun to school.
We've had to endure live shooter training drills on our schools.
High schoolers have enough to deal with. They shouldn't also be responsible for keeping themselves safe at school. That's the job of the government.
The thing is, you are safe at school. An article written by an instructor at Harvard found that the statistical likelihood of any given public school student being killed by a gun in school on any given day since 1999 is roughly 1 in 614 million. Students are far more likely to die traveling to and from school or suffering a life-threatening injury playing sports. The media hypes up every school shooting for ratings, and the anti-gunners try to leverage every school shooting to push for gun control while terrifying students in the process.
Former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, shot in the head from less than 3 feet away. But she survived. When tragedy strikes, We seek comfort in knowing we aren't alone.
Join us in this fight.
We seek strength to keep fighting, to keep moving forward. We turn to leaders who share our pain.
What happened to Giffords was terrible, but the level of resilience she has shown after being shot in the head is nothing short of remarkable, and I have the utmost respect for her as a result. That being said, Giffords' shooter didn't use a so-called assault weapon, and he passed a background check to get the guns used in the shooting. I want to stop shooting as much as the next person, but what gun control law, short of banning them all, would have stopped this? The only solution to violence that Joe Biden has is gun control. That's it. Never once did he say, okay, let's roll up our sleeves and deal with the violence in the inner city where the vast majority of gun violence comes from. And he's been in politics his entire life. He literally said he doesn't care. Joe Biden is a politician, nothing more, nothing less. All he knows is power, and he will say and do whatever it takes to get and maintain that power. Honestly, most politicians are like this. So you need to hold them accountable and make sure that they are giving you tangibles and not just nice words. Too many people forget that they have the power to hold their elected officials accountable by leveraging their votes. I'm not here to tell you who you should or shouldn't vote for, but if you are a gun owner and believe in the Second Amendment, whether you're on the left, right, middle, whoever you plan on voting for, you need to let them know that any infringement on your Second Amendment rights needs to be taken off the table. Otherwise, you'll be literally voting to have your rights stripped away from you. Joe Biden doesn't have to be pro-gun control. Being anti-gun is not a prerequisite to being a Democrat. Stop letting them sell you on that idea. No person running to be the leader of a country who made the right to own firearms their Second Amendment in the ruling document should ever run on restricting that right. So anyone planning to vote for Joe Biden needs to make it clear to him and the Democrat Party that the right to bear arms is non-negotiable. Right now, there's a culture war against the Second Amendment, which is why I need your help spreading our message to counter their message. You can help do this by leaving a comment, sharing this video, and clicking the bell and subscribe button. Let my voice be your voice, and let them know you want to keep America tactical, because the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed wasn't a suggestion, it was a directive. Also, if you're wondering where to purchase your AR-15s are essential, I will not comply. I am the militia. I lost all my guns in a boating accident, and your state-specific Keep America Tactical shirt, click the link next to my head or the link in the description section, or if you're watching this on a mobile device, tap the small triangle on the lower right-hand side of this video and click the link in the description.